Hello, I'm Dr. Robert York-Westbrook, Brazoria County Appraisal District, Board of Directors, Seat 1. I wanted to take out this time to give you an update and to share information on the work that I've been doing on behalf of the constituents of Brazoria County as it relates to property taxes and what I can offer you in terms of help and solutions to deal with your property taxes, which for many of us, and most of us really, are too high. I want to start off by saying that nothing that I'll be discussing in this video represents the opinions or the judgments of the Brazoria County Appraisal District or the Board of Directors. This is a personal video that I'm recording for the constituents that elected me to office, but also anyone that might find what I have to say or my viewpoints to be helpful, but they are my viewpoints. This is also, secondly, not advice. I'm not telling you what you should do or what I think is necessarily best to do. This is strictly informative based on my observations, and those observations are my personal viewpoint. So I have to give that caveat out because anything that's in this video is not legally binding to Brazoria County, the Brazoria County Appraisal District, the Board of Directors, or myself. Again, this is just simply my observations and opinions and my attempt to give back to those who elected me some aspect of what my observations have been as I do this work. I want to start off also by saying to all of you all that put your trust in me and voted for me, how deeply and profoundly humbled I am by that. I really appreciate it. I am not a politician. I am just simply someone who, like many of you, had an issue with property taxes and how much they cost. And a lot of that really was around what I didn't know. So I just wanted to, work for all of us to try to figure out what can we do to make this a better situation for ourselves. So this video is going to take a bit of time. So because property taxes are a complex subject, but I want to encourage you that if you want to understand what my viewpoints are, then you need to watch the entire video. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is how properties are taxed. Before you ever get a property tax statement, which says this is how much your property is being taxed for, this is how much your taxes are, there are things that, in my understanding, that go on behind the scenes. And one of the first things that has to be established is the tax rate. The appraisal district, or the people doing your appraisal, actually have nothing to do with creating the tax rate. The tax rate is a percentage that taxing entities create based on the budget that they have. They're saying that the percentage that they need of homeowners to pay, or business owners, not just homeowners, but business owners or property owners to pay, is based on this budget. They create a budget. So I have here, you'll see a set of different taxing entities, the cities in Brazoria County, the college districts, county costs, like county employees and so forth, the drainage district, emergency services, hospital districts. Most of us are familiar with, and I was primarily familiar with, the schools, the school districts, and then you have, of course, the mud tax, the utilities, and so forth and so on. So each of these groups is a taxing entity, and they have a rate that they have to establish based on their budget. Now, a lot of times, if you were like me, when you got your tax bill and you saw how much it was, I immediately became upset with whoever did the appraisal. But the appraisal piece and the tax rate are two separate pieces. The tax rate is multiplied times whatever your appraised value is, and that gives you your actual tax amount, how much your tax is going to be. So if the tax rate for one of these entities were less, then it's conceivable that your actual tax bill for your property would be less, right? So whenever you see something new going up or something different happening at the schools and so forth, building new buildings and things of that nature, there's money that's involved in that, there's a budget that's involved in that, and that will eventually correlate to some aspect of a tax rate. Okay? Now, so there's two parts. That's the tax rate. Then you have the appraised value for your property. I'm a homeowner. I'm not a business owner per se. I am a pastor. So I do have to deal with, even as the property that we're renting, the owner of that property, when they were faced with an increase in property tax, our church ended up having to pay more money for rent. But I am a homeowner also. So when you look at how your property is appraised, there are three methods that are used. There's the cost approach, which looks at how much would it take to replace the house you're in. And I'm going to talk more about houses than businesses because that's my experience. But how much would it cost to replace the property you're in? A similar structure minus depreciation plus the land value. How much would that cost to replace your house? And one of the things you have to understand about that piece of it is that a lot of times market conditions have something to do with that. Because if there's high inflation for the items that it would take to replace your home, then that means that your home could be appraised at a higher value because it takes more to actually buy the materials to replace the house. That's something to think about. So now you're saying, okay, so basically even national politics can play a role in that, because if you have inflation, that could play a role in it. Then you have something else that's combined with the cost approach, the sales approach. They do not go around, in my understanding, to the individual properties, our individual properties, and come up with, like they come to your house. You never see an appraiser really come to your house and get out of their car and walk around and look at it. They're using computer-generated models of these approaches that feeds them this information. That's very important to understand. And that's one of the reasons why, as we talk about a little later in this video, why you may have to protest, because there may be some things that about your property that these approaches won't cover, right? So that's why we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But the second approach, the cost sales comparison approach, is how much are properties like yours selling for in your area, okay? Once again, this is something that falls outside of your control, my control, because to some large degree to the appraiser's control. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the information is always accurate. Again, this is a computer-generated model that says homes in this area, this size, and this capacity are being sold at about this rate. So there's a science to it. I don't have the exact formula, but these things are brought into a formula and then applied to the tax rate we were talking about earlier, and that's how you get your tax bill. Okay? And for business owners, I know my headshot is probably covering up part of the presentation, but the last one is the income approach, where there's a calculation. They calculate the value of the property based on the income it generates, typically used for income-producing properties like apartments and commercial buildings. So if you own a restaurant or something like that, they're looking at how much income is that property generating. And again, that can fluctuate as well, right? It's a computer-generated model. I don't think that they're going out asking people specifically for their income statements, right, to come up with that. That, again, is a synopsis that they are reaching based on a set of variables that if you don't inform them, they won't know about, okay? So, with that said, now we understand how our property taxes are created. You have taxing entities that have budgets. The budgets create a tax rate that can go, it's not going to typically go down, it's typically going to go up based on the needs of, say, the school district and so forth. We elect those officials in many cases that are governing those budgets. I'm going to say that again. We elect those officials that are governing those budgets. If we don't like the tax rates, those are complaints that maybe we need to get more involved with those taxing entities to say, listen, I've noticed your tax rate has gone up X amount over the past 5 years. I'd like to know why, or I want to do something to dissuade you from, dissuade your committee or whoever is creating that budget from doing that. So, and then the second piece of it is the appraisal piece, which when you think about the sheer size of Brazoria County, it would be very, very difficult to have an appraiser to go to every single home. So most of the information about our homes and businesses are computer generated, or there's some apparatus that's generating that data on using one of those three approaches to come up with a generalized amount for the cost of our property, or how much our property is valued at. What is not happening for sure is what I wish would happen, and I'm going to talk about that later, what I think in terms of what would be my next political push is valuation of property based on how much I have left to pay on it. You know, you go into a property, let's say you pay $500,000 for a house, you've paid off $100,000, now you owe $400,000, but it's being appraised at $600,000 based on those factors I mentioned earlier. When in those three approaches, and then you're multiplying that tax rate times the cost of that property. Well, man, I only have $400,000 left, but I'm being taxed on an appraised value of $600,000. So that's kind of like being taxed on unrealized capital gains, where my property is being taxed at a rate that I haven't realized. And even though someone may appraise it for $600,000, question is, could I sell it really for that amount, for the appraised amount? Or would I even want to sell my house? So these are some of the things that I think most of us have a degree of frustration with, that we're being taxed at an appraised amount that we haven't realized. Like in terms of capital gains, we haven't realized the value of that. We may or may not even be able to get that level of equity in a loan for that appraised amount. So these are questions that are there. But at the end of the day, right now, what's important for us to understand is that this is the way the tax is being constructed. Now, what do the board of directors do? The board of directors do not appraise your property. They have nothing to do with that. We get and again, I'm not speaking for them as a whole, I'm talking about what I can tell you based on my opinion. We get a budget for, say, these entities. Formerly, before they had the election, the taxing entities would seem to select those that would be on the board in the different counties in Texas. So those entities I mentioned, before might select someone to represent that entity as part of the board of directors. And long story short, you get the budget and so forth and so on. You can ask questions about the budget, you can, belabor it, you can talk about it, but at the end of the day, this is what these taxing entities are saying that they need. Um, there's not a referendum or a moratorium or this long drawn out discussion on this budgetary process. I don't know that there could be, because the level of expertise that it takes to create a budget is really housed within that taxing entity itself. And so the tax system in Texas, which does not include, as you know, an income tax, really is dependent on the property tax to be able to fund these entities, which is a primary difference in our state and in some other states. The board of directors chooses the chief appraiser, and that's part of what the board of directors does in terms of that, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the chief appraiser's job is basically to run the appraisal district office. So you have an office of several employees. It includes appraisers, includes office staff, those that answer your questions. The appraisal review board is there, where if you have a protest and you're not happy with your taxes and you want to protest them, you would go before that appraisal review board and make your case known. The chief appraiser is the one that is over that entire process. It's a very big job, and over the appraisers. And although you don't have appraisers going home to home, there are appraisers that do go out on specific projects to accomplish goals of getting the appraisals done in concert with their computer-generated models. And then the last piece of it is the appraisal review board. As I mentioned earlier, this is the group that actually will hear your complaints. Now, I know this slide has got like a lot of red in it, but that's for a reason. Because one of the things that, if you're like me, when I got my property tax bills, I was just so upset and angry. And really, quite frankly, I don't want to say I was afraid because I'm a man of faith, but I was concerned because my wife and I had just bought our house, and the first property tax bill that we got was after it was newly built. So the first year we were there, we were just taxed on basically the land. But then after the structure was built, we got this surprise, which was because we had not paid, the previous year for that amount. All of it came at once. So the mortgage company that we had, you have to keep a certain amount in escrow in addition to paying the taxes for the current year. So we had to upgrade our escrow from when we had not funded it for the actual home being built, and then we had to pay for that year's taxes. That year, put money in for the upcoming year's taxes, and so we were actually hit twice. And so in communities where people are having homes built, this is one of the things that that first couple of years, if they don't know that that's coming, that's a big hit. When you buy a house and it's already built, then 9 times out of 10 you will get a true tax bill from the very beginning. But irrespective to that, the taxes were a shock, and for many of us they're a shock, and we become emotional about it, and in our emotion we just want to protest. And protest for many people is, I'm going to go down here, this house is not worth what they're saying it is. I didn't even pay this amount for the house when I bought it. This is how I thought. Now, many of you may be more educated than that, and that's wonderful. But for many of us, we're going down to protest the reality that what we own the house or what we bought the house for is not what we're being taxed on. And a lot of people walk away never really understanding that tax bill. Because I think, if I'm not incorrect, you only get 15 minutes to do this protest. 15 minutes to state your case is not a lot of time, especially when the appraisal review board has to also state their case. So if you go down to protest your taxes, and your primary vehicle of interaction is anger and resentment, and discussion about things that have nothing to do uh, with, you're not giving them anything that they can use to actually change your tax situation, um, then you would have wasted your time and you won't get anything done. So with that said, that is why I have listed these three things as the primary things that you can talk about when you go down to protest your taxes, that will help you to at least have an opportunity to have them lowered if they are accurate and you can prove them. If you don't have, one of these three things going on with your property, then it's possible that you won't get your case, you won't win your case. Okay, so let me just put that. I had to preface that with that. So the first one is economic obsolescence, and this has to do with where there's been a basic change in the environment of your house or your community that would lower the value of it. So let's say, for example, I've listed some examples here, like a change in aircraft flight patterns. Let's say that, we've lived close to Hobby Airport. Let's say that there's a documented evidence that there are more flights now leaving the airport between 2 a.m. and 7 a.m. every night. And you're able to prove that, and you're saying that it's keeping you up at night, it's preventing you from selling the property to somebody else. That could be something that you could say, okay, this has depreciated the value of the house. Increased crime rates. That's something that's actually provable. If there have been more thefts, more houses broken into, and that's something that you can actually point to, that may be something that will help you. But it needs to be substantial. I remember a couple of years ago, there was a shootout at somebody was using their home for what do you call it, bed and breakfast, or breakfast and bed, whatever, B&B, Airbnb. I'm not that familiar with it. Yeah, so there was a shootout in that community because somebody was having a house party and so forth and so on. That created a really big stir. So that might, things like that, when things like that happen that disturb the basic quality of your environment, you need to make record of that. You can't wait until you get your tax bill to make record of these things. You need to keep records of everything that's going on with that property. Construction of a busy highway. They're building a new highway going through. You can't get in and out of your neighborhood like you would like to, because there are those big orange barrels there. It's dangerous for you, so forth and so on. Those are things that create a problem. And natural disasters can also create problems like that. Then you could also have incurred some physical damage to your property. Significant issues like roof damage. You had to file a claim. You have things that you still haven't been able to repair from some of the hurricanes and the storms and things of that nature. Those are the type of environmental changes, okay, that you should be recording all along, that you would calmly and strategically talk about during a protest. Number two, and I'm sure that I've given you some examples. That's not all of the examples under the economic obsolescence, but those are some pretty good examples of some things that you could protest about. Sales comparisons. The sales comparison approach is inaccurate. When you get your tax bill, one of the things you can look at or you can request from the chief appraiser or from the appraisal district is, I want to see the sales comparison information that you all use to come up with the value of my home. And you want to do that homework before you get to your protest, because you can also look at different sales costs that are maybe on the internet, maybe hard.com, so forth and so on, about properties in your area that are the same size that are not selling for the amount that your house is appraised at. That's a valuable argument. That's a good argument, right? Um, you're saying my house is worth $600,000. There's not one house on the market that's 3,500 square feet with the features my house has that's selling for that. And these houses have been on the market for a year and a half and haven't sold. And they're, less than a mile from me. Well, that's a valid argument, because now you're saying that the sales comparison approach must be inaccurate, because comparative sales data, there are homes in my area that's not selling for that amount. So that could be a very, very strong protest, and maybe perhaps the strongest of protests for homeowners. Those of you that have businesses, you can also talk about your income statement and talk to the chief appraiser before you protest. I like to see, what kind of income you think my property is generating, because here's my income sheet. I've got my bank statements, anything you need, but I am not making the kind of money that you're suggesting that I'm making out of this property. And again, I know that part of the video may be covered up with my headshot. That last one is property features and condition. If your property has unique characteristics like outdated interiors, it needs repairs, the lot is smaller, making it, you're not really able to use it. Maybe you've got some city or county equipment in your backyard, like electric poles and that type of thing, phone lines, whatever. Those are things you can take pictures of and maybe be able to use in your protest. Maybe there's an error in the property description. Most of us just read the tax amount. We don't read the description. Read the description. If there are inaccuracies in the property characteristics, such as square footage, number of bedrooms or bathrooms or lot size, these could be corrected and can support a protest. So if they say that your house is 4,000 square feet and it's actually 3,500, or maybe there's 500 square feet of your home that you can't use because it's unfinished, those are things that you could possibly get used to get your taxes lowered in a protest situation. I do want to mention that if you are, if you do upgrades on your home, and you say, man, I'd like to add a pool, or I'd like to add some new windows and things like that. Keep in mind, if you're increasing the value of the home, you're also increasing the taxable amount. Typically, though, that's probably not something that the appraisal district would know, but if you get, I just want to put that out there, that's part of what could happen as you start to evaluate. So you do have to think about that when you get ready to add on or do anything new to your home. But staying on target, on assignment, these three things: economic obsolescence, has the environment changed, sales comparison, are you appraising my house and what other houses have been selling for in the area, and then property features and condition. Have you described it accurately? Do I have less square feet than you suggest? Is my lot smaller than what you're saying? These are things that you need to become educated about before going to protest. Okay, now we start getting our notice letters in April of each year, and you'll get a letter if your house value went up by more than $1,000, which is most of us. And new owners from previous year or 3 years, you render a request notice. You can ask for a notice as well. And if you don't receive a notice but you want to protest your taxes, you have the right to protest as long as you get in your application to protest by May 15th. There's a May 15th deadline to protest, or 30 days after receiving a notice, whichever is later. Doesn't mean that you're going to complete the protest by May 15th, but you need to submit that you are protesting by that time, or within 30 days after receiving your notice. If you have any questions about this, call the Brazoria County Appraisal District office. and ask those questions, okay? This is very important that you understand this time frame. Appraisals are typically done in January, but you're going to get that notice in April, okay? There's nothing you can do until you get the notice, though, because you don't know what the final stats are going to be. Okay, so here's another piece of information. One of the things we've been talking about, we as citizens going down and protesting, right? That's been what we've been talking about. The other option would be if you wanted to hire a company to protest your taxes. The Brazoria County, again, the appraisal office doesn't do the taxes. They're responsible for the market value. I've already gone over what each entity does, so I won't belabor that point. But when you hire a company, they usually send down an agent or a representative, and they usually have a list of properties. So understand, when you hire a company, in most cases, that company is not going to go down with just your property in tow. They're going to have a list of property, and they're going to present that list one by one. In the ARB, the Appraisal Review Board, is going to go over each one of them. Some agents, they do this informally by email or through the protest portal. And they send in, they will ask you, the company will ask you for evidence based on those three things I mentioned earlier. Now let me say this. If you decide to go with a company, realize, and a lot of times those companies will not give you the level of detailed information that I just did in terms of what can help you win a protest. So you have to help them by taking what I'm educating you on and formulating your argument, because what they're basically doing is they're protesting so you don't have to take off work to go do it, so you don't have to have somebody else to pick up your kids or shut your business down and go protest, right? They're doing it for you. That's really the service that most of these companies provide. And from what I understand, most of them get paid out of your savings. Like if you save $3,000, they want a percentage of that savings. If you save $3,000 on your property tax, they want a percentage of that savings. So in most cases, you don't have to pay anything up front. You only pay if they're able to save you money on your property taxes. Now, with that said, understand that you need to give them something to work with. If you just send them a statement like I did and say, hey, this is how much I own the property and this is how much they're appraising it for, that doesn't make sense. That's not enough. But if you send them data, comparative sales data for houses being sold in your area, if you send them pictures, if you send them news articles about crime, things like I just mentioned earlier, that's going to help them protest for you. Okay. And one of the questions that comes up is, do these companies make a more compelling case than residents? Who knows the property better? The protest company could know, maybe, the protest system better, how to articulate your case better, possibly, not necessarily. But they will only be as strong as the information you send them. It is quite possible that your personal protest could be a more substantial and powerful case, especially if you're educated and you have brought one of those three factors that I mentioned earlier. It's possible that you could make a stronger case for your property. And also the fact that you are there in person and protesting passionately about something that means something to you. But keep in mind, you only have a few minutes. You need to get straight to the point. You need to have evidence, and you need to really, even practice before you go. Really know what you're going to say and how you're going to present it, and so you'll have the best shot. Okay. So it's debatable who's going to do it better. Some of us get nervous in situations like that, but at the same time, whether you do it or they do it, the same areas, those same three areas apply in terms of what's really needed to protest. And if you win your protest, it's very possible. Obviously, you could get your taxes lowered. I was able to do it once. I'm 1 in 3 right now. I'm 1 in 3. First year I was able to do it. Last 2 years haven't been successful. So that's my story right now. Okay, what else can you do? What else can we do? I ran on the slogan, property taxes are too high. I still believe that. And every chance I get, I'm working to do what I can to lower them. One of the things I said I wanted to do was take a real hard look at the chief appraiser. And we had an opportunity to do that. And I made your voices heard in the meetings that we had about what our discontent was, which was really not necessarily the chief appraiser's fault, but it was the fact that we don't have any real understanding or reason why our property taxes are so high. And we have no idea where this is going to end, because every year it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse for many people. And I made that known. One of the things that I said I wanted to do is take a look at the chief appraiser. Well, here's the truth about that. There are very few people in the appraisal business or industry right now that can be hired. And one of the things that I did actual research by calling staffing companies. I didn't take anybody in the appraisal district's word for it. I called actual staffing companies, had meetings with people that had hired appraisers for other counties, and they gave me hardcore evidence that there is a shortage of appraisers, especially chief appraisers. It's not an industry that has a whole lot of people in it. Everybody that I work with on the board of directors, none of us are paid. Not one dime. We're not paid. These are not paid positions. The chief appraiser is a paid position, but I can verify from my research that the chief appraiser is not overpaid. The person is paid at a very competitive rate, and there's not enough appraisers. So there's a lot that has to be done just to keep the one that we have. If you lose your appraiser, you're still going to end up getting taxed, but you can end up getting taxed all at once for 2 years versus it being incrementally. So it's better to try to maintain that piece of it, especially given what I told you today, which is that there are a number of entities that play a role in creating this tax problem. Okay. Now, other than protesting, what can you do? One of the things you can do is apply for the appraisal review board. Now, if you would apply for the appraisal review board, I don't want you to think that you're applying to review your own taxes. You would be doing that like I did when I ran for office, which is making a sacrifice to make sure that your neighbors are treated fairly. That's what you'd be doing it for. So you may not have any say on your taxes, but you could possibly become more educated and help people like I'm doing right now, or you might have a different viewpoint than some of the people on the appraisal review board when it comes to listening to citizens. So I would encourage you, if you're able to apply, there's a link here in this page. I know it'd be better if you could just click on it. Hopefully we can get this where you can get access to this information on YouTube. But the application information is there where you can apply for the review board, and there's also some information there about the rules and procedures. ARB members do not get paid. They receive a stipend for certain aspects of their job, but it is not very much. So you really have citizens committed to helping other citizens doing this work and doing these jobs, with the understanding that these taxing entities have to be funded. So it's really kind of a conflict of interest, to be honest with you, in my opinion. All of these jobs are pretty tough. Is it what I thought it was? I didn't know what it was. Like most of us didn't know. But I went in to find out what it was all about so I could come out and give you all of the tools that I possibly can, so that you can get your property taxes lowered. And now, given this video, you have very specific tools that you can use to get your property taxes lowered. But you got to follow the process, and you got to be honest with yourself about whether those issues that I said, lower property taxes, whether they work for you. As I conclude this video, I want to conclude with perhaps the most important thing that all of us can do as it relates to property tax, and that is understanding the tax code. In other words, right now in the state of Texas, these taxing entities are being funded primarily through property tax. It's a huge means of how our schools and other aspects of our state institutions survive. And as I mentioned earlier, also other states have income tax and they have other means to, to fund these entities. The tax code is kind of like the constitution of taxing that says this is how we're going to do taxes. We, in my opinion, as citizens, need to reach out, and I have been doing that. I have been working with people across. It doesn't matter what political party they're in or any of that. I didn't run on a political party. I could care less about a political party. I'm running to lower property taxes and give you a better quality of life, and my kids a better quality of life, and my wife and I a better quality of life. That's why I'm here. I'm not here to lift up the banner for any political movements of any kind. But whoever your representative is, be they whatever party they are, you need to call these people and tell them you're hurting and that you want the tax code fixed or changed. Now understand that that may not be the easiest thing in the world for them to do. Don't let them push you away. Don't let these now I'm talking about state representatives now. I'm not talking about national representatives. I'm talking about the tax code for the state of Texas, calling your local state representative and saying, I want that code changed. Getting your neighbors together and forming, focus groups, property tax focus groups that will go in mass or call in mass or write in mass to those state representatives, even the governor and the lieutenant governor and the Texas comptroller and every person that is in a position to do anything as it relates to taxes, property taxes in the state of Texas. You need to become extremely active in this, and I'm doing it. I'm working on this because here's the problem. As I said earlier, Texans are being taxed on unrealized capital gains as it relates to their property. It is my belief, and if you want to know what to tell them, I'm going to tell you what I tell them. Texans would not have a problem being taxed on the amount that they have left or owe on the home that they're in. If I paid $500,000 for a house, or I owe $500,000, I owed originally on the mortgage $500,000, and now it's $400,000. I just want to be taxed on $400,000. I'll pay that happily, but I don't want you to give me an appraised value that is based on a set of formulas. Let me sit in, or you keep a record of where now. That means though, as soon as that happens, like in my case, that'd be $100,000, multiplied times that tax rate that a taxing entity wouldn't get. So where's that money going to come from? So it's not like we can end property tax without having some other vehicle to fund these taxing entities, right? The school districts are going to need money. But perhaps we can tax other things. Perhaps we can do things where property owners in the state of Texas are not the only ones being taxed. In other words, you have people that are not renting not the primary payer for rent, not the primary payer for mortgage, not the primary business owner, right? They're not being taxed in any way, shape, or form, other than, other nominal tax. Maybe we need to start thinking about other items that we need to tax in order to fund these entities so that we can move towards lowering property tax. Maybe there is some level of additional tax that we can levy from other entities, other industries, that would allow us to lower property tax. In my opinion, though, the current tax code is not sustainable. It is causing the elderly, those with disabilities, and just everyday Texans to have to lose their homes, and it's not right. It's not really our job to figure out how we fix the tax code. That's really the representative's job. But if the tax code doesn't change, then the taxing entities are going to keep coming up with their tax rate, and appraisers are going to have to keep doing their job based on those three vehicles, which are standard pretty much nationwide. Those three: the cost approach, the sales approach, the income approach. Those are standard. They're not doing any. There's no funny business going on with that. The problem is the reality that our taxing industries, the entities, the school districts, and the MUD and all of that are all depending solely almost on property taxes to keep them funded. So again, you need to contact your state representative, tell them you're unhappy about the tax code. I'm not going to vote for you next time. Oh, well, you've been in the party X amount. I don't care how long I've been in anything. I'm not voting for you. And this whole focus group is not voting for you unless you give us a plan for how you are going to get the tax code changed so that property tax is not the sole way that taxing entities are being funded. I hope that this video has been educational to you. I again thank you for your confidence in me and the opportunity to serve in this capacity. I am a husband, father, pastor, full-time employee, working every day, but not for the Brazoria County Appraisal District. This is a volunteer effort for me. I show up in every aspect and every way I can. I'm fighting for you, not because I want you to vote for me again the next time, because I don't know that that's going to be happening. But I'm doing it because I genuinely care, and I empathize and sympathize with those of us that are fighting this fight in terms of these high property taxes. Okay. Now, as I conclude, my email is here: ryork-westbrook at brazoriacad.org. That's R-York dash, don't forget the dash, Westbrook at brazoriacad, C-A-D, .org. If you have questions that I can answer, you can send them to me. If I can't answer them, I will get them to the right person. And so thank you for taking our time to watch this video. Please send it to your family and friends in Brazoria County so we can get our property taxes lower.